Britain's surprising election results are rippled across the markets today. The pound plunged after the Conservative Party that had hoped to tighten its grip on power actually lost support.
The polls resulting in a hung parliament where no one party would easily be able to pass laws. The markets have been holding up, however. The FTSE in London added 8% today, with some stocks actually benefiting from the lower pound. Investors may also be taking heart in the announcement that the Conservative Party plans to form a minority government with support from the Northern Ireland Party. There have been perhaps cheering the news that the results could mean as well that there's a softer Brexit or exit of the UK from the EU.
Well, to discuss this, we're now joined by the CEO of the South African Chamber of Commerce in the UK, David Butler. David Butler, thank you very much for joining us on the programme. Has the pound got the sentiment right?
I think that the pound has reacted, the markets have reacted in shock, and which is understandable. I think all the polls were indicating that the Conservatives would be returned with a workable majority. The fact that they haven't has sent the pound into sort of convulsions. But there is a silver lining to the cloud. So one of the key indicators of the economy is, the posturing around Brexit and the negotiations, and I think that the hung parliament and Mrs May's requirement to form a minority government has meant that it is extremely unlikely that the negotiations will have a no-deal option on the table. So I think the markets are starting to take heart in the fact that we're heading more towards a soft Brexit, which has all of those implications. And obviously the FTSE, a large amount of UK multinationals make their profits in euros and dollars, and returning those profits on a weak pound inflates their value. So that's hence the share price is climbing quite nicely.
All right, so during the course of the day, everybody's busy trying to work out what went wrong. Was it the fact that she didn't show up for these debates or whatever? But have we been able to understand, as sort of by the sort of late afternoon, the day after, just what people voted for? Was it actually even Brexit, or were they voting on other issues and Brexit got caught up in it?
I think there's a key point here that needs to be brought, and actually it's applicable for South Africa and for the US and others, is that for the first time the youth have voted, have come out and voted for change. So what we've seen is a massive increase in the under-30s vote, and where they voted is for Jeremy Corbyn. They like Jeremy Corbyn. They like the policies, the shift from austerity that the Labour Party has put front and centre of its manifesto, and the young have come out and voted for that, and they voted for change. I think the under-30s have been stung by the feedback from the referendum, where most of them didn't bother to vote, didn't understand what was happening, and felt disenfranchised. And now it's very clear that there's quite a large anti-Brexit sentiment in amongst the youth, and that's a large part to play. You can see when you do the analysis, and in hindsight, this sort of analysis is always easy to put rationale to, but it looks like Mrs May was punished for a lackluster campaign, an overemphasis on her qualities, and then clear demonstration of her inability to be steadfast and positive, and the strength of Corbyn's charisma and personality. So that shifted a lot of votes.
Okay, so we've got a map of the UK at the moment, and on the left-hand side, of course, is Northern Ireland, and the DUP have become her saviour, in a sense, but they are softies, though, aren't they? And that's problematic for Theresa May, as she now has to cross the channel, go to Brussels, and start sorting out a deal.
Yeah, the DUP are a bit of a mess, really, and this, I guess this is my personal opinion. You know, you've got a weird political environment in Northern Ireland. So the DUP are pro-Brexit in the main. They are entertaining hard Brexit options. However, you know, there's no way that their electorate would countenance a hard border between North and Ireland, Northern Ireland and Ireland. So they've got to be very clear about where they stand on this. And you know, and Mrs. May is a lame duck prime minister. I think everybody understands that. And for her to be able to go to Brussels and negotiate on behalf of the United Kingdom when people don't even believe she's going to be prime minister by the end of the summer is going to be very, very difficult. I can't see any headway being made in Brussels at all over the next few months.
All right, so perhaps finally, you know, there's this debate of soft Brexit, hard Brexit. The EU probably want a hard one. You know, if you don't fancy us, go, be on your way, good luck to you. And a soft Brexit, I mean, is that even a Brexit at all?
That's a very good point. The EU, let's be clear, the EU doesn't want a hard Brexit. The EU wants the UK to remain in the European Union. And it has all the cards to play. So, you know, a soft Brexit will mean staying in the customs unit, will mean soft borders, will mean concessions with free movement, but will also include a significant payment to the EU for what the UK is required to do. And I think if you fast forward 2 years and you come to a point where, you know, a government is in power on the basis of saying we will do a deal, a good deal to leave the EU, and we will bring that deal back to the people. By that stage, with that information, I think most of the electorate in the UK will turn around and say, well, a soft exit is actually not an exit at all, because we're worried about immigration and we're worried about sovereignty. But the European Court of Justice is always going to be there if we want any sort of decent trade agreement that includes free movement. And I think people might turn around and say, well, we don't want to leave at all at that point. And the EU will be happy with that, because ultimately that's what they want. From an economic perspective, you know, the UK pays significant funds into the EU coffers. So when the UK withdraws, there's going to be a shortfall, and that's going to cause a lot of problems for some of the newer members of the European Union that rely on the EU coffers for major structural investments. Right. So, you know, I can very clearly see the EU might look at this and go, okay, we've got a weak government, we've got indecision, let's push to keep the UK in the EU.
David Butler, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. That's the CEO of the South African Chamber of Commerce in the UK. And Francis, it's going to be a long, hot summer for Theresa May.